Skull Rock Podcast is brought to you by the generosity of the following companies. The Old Mill Press, publishing beautifully crafted books that illuminate our world. To learn more, visit theoldmillpress.com. And by listeners like you.
Hello, everyone. I'm animator Mark Kausler. You're listening to the Skull Rock Podcast.
Aye, mateys. Remember this as the day you sailed with the Skull Rock Podcast. Proceed at your own risk, and mark well me words, mateys. Dead men tell no tale.
Welcome to Skull Rock Podcast, the show about all things Disney and pop culture. Every week we take you behind the scenes of some of your favorite Disney films, theme park attractions, performances, books, music, as well as what's streaming, what's in theaters, and what's going on in this universe of entertainment. Hello, I'm Aljon, one of your co-hosts and longtime Disney, Marvel, Star Wars, and pop culturist. And you can email me, Aljon, A-L-J-O-N, at skullrockpodcast.com.
And I'm Dave Bossert, artist, filmmaker, author, and welcome to the Skull Rock Podcast. If you love Disney and pop culture, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. You can also like and follow us on Facebook, X, Instagram, Blue Sky, LinkedIn, or on YouTube. You can also email me at dave@skullrockpodcast.com.
On behalf of Dave, we both hope you had a great holiday season. I know I did. Great to hang out with the family, and it's great to have you along for this week's episode of Skull Rock Podcast. While Dave is out, I wanted to play you awesome interview from back in the day. Let's go back into the time machine and check out our interview with Rick Baptist, legendary trumpeter and session musician. He's done music for Rocky Balboa, Ratatouille, Soul, over 5,000 cartoons from Animaniacs, Pinky and the Brain, Family Guy, and so much more. So he's going to talk about scoring. He's going to talk about soundtracks, as well as all the work he's done with Rocky, Sylvester Stallone, and of course, Disney and animation, including Soul, which I'm excited about. Just rewatched that during the holiday break with the family and absolutely love Soul from Disney-Pixar. Anyway, sit back and relax and enjoy this time machine look into our interview with Rick Baptist, legendary trumpeter and session musician, right here on Skull Rock Podcast.
This is animator Rebecca Reese, and you are listening to the Skull Rock Podcast.
Skull Rock Podcast. Interview time.
Oh, Aljon, as I mentioned earlier, we've got an incredible guest. I'm happy to call him a friend. His name is Rick Baptist. He is a trumpeter extraordinaire, a session musician. This is unbelievable. He has been part of the American Federation of Musicians since the age of 12. He's played on 13,000 motion picture soundtrack scores. And
no, 1,300.
And like
Seems like
5,000 cartoons. I mean, he's played on the scores of the first 14 Pixar movies. He's played on Disney animation films from The Little Mermaid through Frozen. I mean, unbelievable. Welcome, Rick Baptist, to the Skull Rock Podcast. It's so great to have you.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, guys. I am excited to be here. Normally, I'm used to seeing Dave in the booth and telling us how great we sound, but this is way cool. I'm just so thrilled to be here, and I'm ready to go. Lay it on me, baby.
Well, you know something, Rick, the amazing thing to me, and what I've always marveled at when we've worked together, and as you mentioned, I'm in the booth sometimes because you guys are on stage playing a score for something that I had worked on. And I just always sat on the sofa and was just awestruck by the talent of all the musicians in those sessions. And it really was something else to watch. And I just want people to understand that you're not just a musician, a trumpeter. You are somebody who walks onto a stage for a session and you're seeing the music for the first time, right?
That's correct. Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I sit there and go, how do these guys do this? Because you bring all of these musicians together, and clearly you've worked together with many of these people on a regular basis, but you all come in and you're all seeing the music score for the first time. It's not like somebody sent you the score and you're practicing at home before you come to the session. You're actually seeing it. What is that like? What does that feel like?
Actually, the thing that I've always loved about that is that it absolutely keeps you at the top of your game. We do not, as you said, Dave, we have no idea what we're going to play. I mean, obviously, we worked with the composers before, but each score is so different, And so mainly the musicians that we work in the studio with is they're at the top of their game every time, because as soon as you sit down as a trumpet player, I put that mouthpiece to my lip and we rehearse. We might rehearse 1 or 2 times, and then the red light goes on and it's going to tape, So it's a rush. It's a true rush. But the thing that I've always loved and appreciated is the fact that I am working with amazing musicians. And this is what I try to impart to some of the younger musicians when I do things like this or do a master class or whatever, is that the thing that I have found that every musician I work with and work in the studios is the main thing that they do when they sit down, open up that book, they get ready to play, their concentration level is at 100%. The whole time. And so, the way I explain it to the younger musicians is like the first time you play a piece of music down usually is the best you play it because your concentration is at 100%. The second time you play it is when you make mistakes, you make clams or whatever, because your concentration goes down. So every one of those musicians, when they sit down to play, the whole time, their concentration is 100%, because nobody wants to make a mistake. I mean, when you're working on a big movie with 100 musicians, and especially trumpet players who play, as you know, we can play very loud, Well, when we make a mistake, everybody hears it. We don't want that. So you just concentrate the whole time and play the best you can. But that's pretty much in a nutshell what the mindset of all the musicians are when they're there. And for me, as far as the cartoon parts, I love doing cartoons. Ever since I was a kid, I watched all the cartoons, as I'm sure all of us have. But when in 1990, when I started doing Tiny Toons and Animaniacs and Pinky the Brain and Taz and all those, I realized that that's what I really love doing. To be, not only play what the composer wrote, but be creative about what we do or what I do and what I can bring to that score. That's what I love. I do.
And a couple things I want to mention here. I remember being in recording sessions where the first take was the best take. I mean, it was like the composer or the conductor at the podium was like, wow, that's it. And we would always do one more for backup. Right. But like you said, it was that 100% concentration, because oftentimes that first take of a cue, boy, that was it. Boom, you did it.
Yeah, I mean, and again, that's the rush behind it, And most of the time, there's some composers who like to rehearse and play and make a take after take after take after take. And I'm sure in film, actors, I've talked to athletes, they said the same thing. The first or second take they do of the scene is usually the best, because your whole body, your whole brain, your whole spirit, everything is put into that take. The more you do it over and over and over again, again, the concentration does sometimes go down, and that's when you have mistakes. So yeah, it's absolutely right. What you said is absolutely correct. We never did more than one or two takes, maybe a pickup take, whatever, but that was it. The red light was on all the time, you know.
Well, that's because I have to say, Rick, because I'm also a musician, not of course your caliber, of course, but
the guitar in the back.
Yeah. So, but I remember going through my juries and everything, and you had to be, because I was also music education major at one point. But sight reading is definitely a skill, and for everyone, sight reading is exactly what Rick described. You sit down for the first time reading a piece of music, but that just goes to your vocabulary, the millions of hours you've practiced to become, the artist that you are today. And it's not easy, but there's also that spontaneity that happens when you get together with a group of musicians that I think you have to experience, and everything clicks. The conductors is doing everything great. The cues just happen magically. Everybody's, as you said, on their A game, because no one wants to make a mistake. They come in where they're supposed to come in, and there's that electricity, and you can only feel that, the first time when you play a piece of music together.
That's very true. Very true.
Hey, Rick, let me ask you this. I want to step back in time here, because I was really blown away because I had not known this until leading up to our conversation today. But you actually you joined the American Federation of Musicians at age 12. How's that possible?
Well, the way I became a trumpet player was in the fifth. I was born with asthma. I still have asthma to this day. When I was in fifth grade, I was running around the track at school, and my left lung collapsed. I was 10 years old. The doctors were able to save whatever, And so the doctor, Dr. Feldman, God bless him, he said, I suggest you take up a wind instrument to help build up your lungs, right? So back in those days, fifth grade, you could go pick a band instrument, right? And so I'll never forget, there was an Ed Sullivan show we watched every Sunday night, and Harry James was on the Ed Sullivan show. And I thought, wow, trumpet, that would be cool. And so I went to school immediately, ran and grabbed a trumpet. Thank God my folks, we rented a trumpet from San Lorenzo Music Center, which is in Northern California. And it came with 3 lessons, right? And so that's how I started playing. And like I said, I was 10 years old. And at age 12, the trumpet, I really was not, and I don't like telling this story, but it's the truth. I never really liked practicing. I never liked playing at home because, and even to this day, if I have a couple of days off, and I'll call one of my fellow trumpet players, mainly this great female trumpet player, Glenda Smith, and I call her up. I say, Glenda, I got a couple of days off. You got to beat me up. And I go over to her house, and we play 2 hours nonstop of duets. After that, I was ready. But anyway, the trumpet came, and I thank God for this, came relatively quick to me. I played. So at 12 years old, I was at the San Lorenzo Music Center. The gentleman, Juanito Silva, had this big band, 18-piece Latin band called the Pan Americans. And I played in that, and they were all members of the union. So I figured, okay, I got to join the union. So 12 years old, and I had to get special permission from the Federation. So yes, next year I will be in the Musicians Union for 60 years.
Holy mackerel.
But I knew that once I started playing, I took every job that came along. I played Chinese funeral, Portuguese Holy Ghost parades, any kind of bands, anything that I could play, taps at funerals, anything just to play my instrument. And that's what I did the whole time through high school. And then when I was 20 years old, Bobby Darin was came to San Francisco at a club called Mr. D's, and I played for him in the band, and first trumpet in the band. And he said, kid, I like your playing. He says, I'm going to Harrah's Reno for 2 weeks. I want you to come up there as my first trumpet player. I said, well, yeah, that's great, but I'm only 20. Yeah, lie about your age, So I went up there with him. And from there, I always knew I wanted to come to Los Angeles and work in the studios. That was the whole thing. I knew that because I watched the Oscars and hear those guys. And I'm thrilled to say that for 32 years, I was first trumpet player on the Oscars.
Yeah, which is really amazing. I was going to ask you about that, and now that you brought it up, I mean, you did something that I thought was really interesting. You took photos of people, of celebrities and stars and whatnot. You took photos from the pit.
Right, exactly. And that, yeah. So what we would do is, because the pit, I mean, we're right there. You know, the audience is there. Right up above us is where they accept awards. And so I always had my camera at all the sessions. I got a lot of pictures of Dave.
That's awesome.
Stuff with the Sherman brothers and everything. Anyway, so what we do, I would sit in the pit, and the conductor is right here, and so we play. And the winner is play the thing. I put my horn down, pick up my camera, lean back, snap a couple pictures. So I have of pictures for over 30 years. That no one's ever seen. And I'm actually, one day I'm going to do, and I know I talked to you about this, Dave, I want to do a coffee table book of all the photos along with stories. And the title of the book, I've already got it in my head, is called The Best Seat in the House. Because truthfully, it is the best seat in the house.
That's awesome. We got to do that, Rick. I remember you and I met up at a Starbucks in Burbank, and we chatted about that outdoors. We were sitting outside talking about that. One of these days, right? We're going to do this.
Absolutely.
We are going to do this.
I'll be the first in line for that book. I would. That is a brilliant idea for a book, and I can't wait.
The stories, I love the stories, and that's the thing, you know. And the thing that I always loved about, and talk about playing, I love playing live, and to see the audience reaction but anyway, playing live, and on the Oscars, right before the show, the director would always, in our headphones, say, okay, folks, don't forget you're going live to 1 billion people.
No pressure.
That'll get your juices going, you know, because you don't want 1 billion people to hear these, you know, horrible mistakes or whatever, you know.
I've made so many clams playing live, I could have my own clam bake. But the thing is, you said, Rick,
right,
was super important early on, because you got up there and you played for people. You played at, you know, like ice cream socials. You played everything.
Anything.
And you played, you play, and that's how you hone your craft. Not only just the immense amount of sight reading you do, the more you do it, just like anything else, the better you are at it. You are, of course, the king at it. And then you have all these little things playing in front of people, and that gets your chops going. And I would also assume, you know, the improv chops as well that you've proven on so many different soundtracks. And I also want to point this out. Your IMDb page lists 169 credits to your name as composer. You have 169 credits. That seems to be a really prolific number for you in the music department and soundtrack. I mean, I can't even imagine the hundreds of things you've done over the years for actor, composer, music department. So just so our audience knows, it's everything, not just Disney, Pixar. It's everything.
Right.
X-Men, Marvel, everything.
That's the great thing about being a studio musician. You get a chance to do this. Like I said, I played on 1,300 movies. The 5th movie I played on when I moved to town from Las Vegas, where I was for 10 years in Vegas, honing my craft and learning to play and all that, was E.T. with John Williams, you know. And so, you know, just to say, but for me, again, the Disney movies, the Disney cartoons, there is something different. And with Pixar, the thing we love Pixar, the musicians love Pixar so much, is because they truly appreciate us so much. I mean, when you go on a Pixar movie, to do a movie, wherever, like Warner Brothers stage, they put up 2 cameras in front of the orchestra, filming us, watching us play the music that they pipe back to their studio so that all the animators can hear what our music is doing. They also, right in front of the conductor, have like this foam head, looks like a person's head, which is actually a 360-degree microphone. So they hear everything. They appreciate us so much. And the products are, you know, and if I may tell one story about how important, and I think it really goes to any movie, how important music is to movie. We were doing the movie Up, and the producer Pete Docter came out. So it was Michael Giacchino, who actually won an Oscar for that. All right, but Pete Docter came up before, and we had one of the cues, and the cue was a minute and a half cue, or no, three and a half minute cue. And it was, if you remember in the movie, it was right near the beginning where the old gentleman was reminiscing about his wife. And at the end of that 3.5 minutes, if you don't have a little tear in your eye, you have no soul. So Pete Docter got up on the podium, and as David knows, when we record the music, they have a huge screen behind the musicians, and so you can see the scene you're playing to, but we never hear dialogue, right? So Pete got up there. He said, "Ladies and gentlemen, before you play this cue, I want you to put your headphones on, turn around, and I'm going to put the dialogue in your headphones so you can see and hear what you're playing to." And so he did that, right? And we thought, oh, wow, that's lovely, And it was cool hearing the dialogue. So then we recorded the music. Then after lunch, he got back on the podium. He says, "Now, I want you to see what your music did to my movie." And he did the same thing, put the dialogue with our music in the phone. We watched it, and 75 grown men and women were crying. Mm-hmm. That's the power of music. That's why I love what I do. And that's why David loves what he does.
Yeah, but something, I've also been a big fan of music and musical scores, partially because I have a tin ear and I'm not musical at all. but I can appreciate music, and certainly the music itself is a supporting character to the film. In other words, any movie that you look at, if you didn't hear that score, it diminishes the overall film in my mind.
I agree.
And so, people really need to take that into account. It's this wonderful, wonderful layer that elevates the entire film, the performances of the actors and the dialogue that's being delivered, and the visuals that are being presented. Now,
and that's why a lot of the actors come and show up to scoring sessions. I mean, we've had my favorite is Sir Anthony Hopkins. We were doing Red Dragon, and so he showed up. And he brought his mother to the scoring stage. He got up, and conducted. Afterwards, I was talking with him, and I asked him, and he's the nicest man. Oh my God, this is Tony Hopkins. Anthony. He insists on being called Tony, right? He respected what we did. And so I asked him, "Tony, how did you become Hannibal Lecter?" I said, "What scales did you do?" Because he's an accomplished pianist also. Mm-hmm. And he said, what scales do you do? He said, "Well, truthfully," he says, "I sat and watched 50 hours of interviews with mass murderers, and I took away one thing." Now we're leaning in, right? That one thing he took away was, he said, when they talk to you, they never blink. And if you go back and get Silence of the Lamb, when he's on camera, he never blinks. That's how he got that maniacal kind of look. It's the darndest thing. And I tell us, people go read Silence of the Lamb because it's a true story,
Hey, let me ask you this question. Look, you've been on you've played on scores for 1,500 motion pictures and thousands and thousands of cartoons.
Right.
What are the ones that bubble up? I mean, you just mentioned, Red Dragon because you talked to Anthony Hopkins, but what are some of the other films? And I'm not going to ask you what your favorite film was, because we in the business, no one has a favorite, I don't think, because they're like your children, yeah. But you have those ones that sort of bubble to the top and say, wow, I had such a great experience on that because. I mean, what are some of the ones that bubble up for you?
Again, I think for me, I am thrilled to say that I played on Rockies 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Bill Conti.
Yeah, right. It's God. There's so many. Anything John Williams, The Hook. I mean, you know, of course, E.T. and Jurassic Park, and I played on the Indiana Jones, you know, the Crystal Skull. And, you know, there's, as far as favorite composers, I think top of the list would be Jerry Goldsmith. And, of course, John Williams. I love Michael Giacchino to work with. I did all the lethal weapons, all 4 of those. I mean, you know, when I look at the list of movies, and it's just so fun, especially for me now that I have grandchildren, and they know, oh, Papa played on this, you know. But for me, going through the 500 channels on cable, and in my head, I count, oh, wow, I remember that. I did that one. I did this. So I think truthfully, the ones that really stick out the most, like Incredibles. And I'll tell you how that is. When you buy, I mean, that was an amazing score. It was really supposed to be John Barry. They wanted a James Bond-ish kind of thing, and John Barry couldn't do it. So they got this young guy, Michael Giacchino, who knocked out of the park, right? So when you buy the DVD, there was a thing you could go to music, right? And so you click on that, and it shows us playing the score. And there I am. And of course, I like talking. And so it says the first trumpet, Rick Baptist, right? That one movie, Incredibles, on Facebook to this day, I still get young trumpet players from around the world. Oh, you're my favorite trumpet player. You played on Incredibles. Just that one movie touched that many musicians, you know.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it is amazing. I mean, to me, I got just a couple of weeks ago, I got a call from a young trumpet player from Bophuthatswana, South Africa. Wow. And he says, could you friend me? You know, you're my favorite trumpet player. And I mean, that's why I love what I do.
It's really amazing. I'm just curious, when it comes to doing animation or cartoon music, it is very much different from doing scores for live action films. And can you talk a little bit about that for our audience and sort of explain the difference? Because I've heard this from so many musicians that I've worked with, like yourself, over the years, about cartoon music being more difficult.
It is, and it's more difficult because there's, you know, tons of notes, you know, but I think what I try to do, and a lot of my fellow musicians, the great trombone player, Alan Kaplan, especially on cartoon music, there's a lot of times that we can make effects with our horn that is not written by the composer. He's actually putting it back in our hands and say, hey guys, this is what I want you to do. So we can put our own personality into that. And by doing that, sometimes you hit a home run. Most of the time, sometimes, you know, you foul it off and we got to do that. I don't like what you did there, do it again. But that is, I think, the most important thing with the cartoon music. And to go back what was the sight reading part of it, you know, because some of that music is pretty ridiculously hard. And especially when we were doing all the Tiny Toons and Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain Nose, that orchestra, we would do probably 3 days a week cartoons, just those cartoons. And it got to the point where even us in the orchestra, holy criminy, this is amazing. This band is amazing. You know, I mean, it's nice to hear it from the people in the booth and the people that hire you. But when your fellow musicians come up to you, man, what you did yet, or this and that, you know, that's the rush that makes you. So yeah, cartoon music is a totally different style. It's a totally different style. You have to think out of the box. You have to, and again, I grew up listening to all the cartoons. And Alan Kaplan, I talked to him, the trombone player, he was amazing with the plunger. And he actually wrote a joke book called The Art of Wah, because that's what we call it. Wah, 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 you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, I mean, it's it's a totally different vibe than when you sit on a John Williams date or whoever, Hans Zimmer, whoever. It's a totally different style of playing, but you still, I really think it would be, not everybody can do it.
Yeah. And one of the things that you just mentioned here about the composer or the conductor putting it onto you to make some sort of a sound or something to help accent the action in the cartoon. One of the things I've always, my view anyway on the projects that I had worked on was that I wanted the musicians to create the sound effects. I didn't want to use sort of electronic sound effects. I wanted it to be musically done. And so on a lot of the projects you and I had worked on over the years, that's what we did. Yeah, there you go. The Have-A-Last. Yeah. I don't even know if I have one of those coffee mugs.
No, can you see what that says?
Oh yeah, relax. We're starting with a 10. Mark Waters, our buddy Mark Waters. And by the way, just to tell our audience, oftentimes we would, the sessions are specific time frames, and
usually 10 o'clock in the morning. Yeah,
it would start at 10 o'clock, but oftentimes Mark would be writing the score that we were recording, 4 or 5 hours before the 10 o'clock session,
right.
And so at 10 o'clock, we would be like, where's Mark? And it was a running joke that we always started with a 10 at 10 o'clock. So we had a 10-minute break at the beginning of the session.
Yeah, so we could write the last refrain, right? I love it.
Listen, we were in recording stages over the years where Mark would, during lunch, be rewriting something in the break room, right? Remember,
Yeah,
I mean, it's fantastic. But I love working with Mark. Mark and I had worked together for like 20 years.
Did you ever get a chance to work with Richard Stone?
No, I did not. No.
Richard Stone is the one who did all the Animaniacs, Tiny Toons, Pinky and the Brains, and Carl Stallings in the 40s was the one who really developed this style of writing for cartoons, and he worked for Disney and as well as Warner Brothers. And I really believe that when Carl Stallings passed, that his everything went into Richard Stone because he was amazing at writing that kind of music.
Yeah. Carl Stalling was the first music director for the Disney Studios. In fact, he was the guy that came up with the idea of doing the Silly Symphonies, which were music-based cartoons. And he Walt knew him from Kansas City and coaxed him out to Los Angeles to work on the early animation at Disney. And then Carl left and went to Warner Brothers, and he spent his entire career, I think, till 1965, working at Warner Brothers.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm just curious, did you ever have a chance to work with him?
Never. No, I never chanced. The other one I wanted to meet was Milt Franklin. But the thing is that on these things, on half of they actually pulled, Mark Waters and everybody else pulled the original scores. So for me, that was such, and actually all the musicians, it was such a thrill to be able to play those notes again, recreate them.
Yeah,
those notes, and that was the closest I came to working with Milt Franklin and or Carl.
Yeah, or Oliver Wallace. Or
Oliver, of course.
Yeah, I mean, some of the other.
That was such a thrill to do those, and I know I've told on every session. I would say that this is such a thrill. When we did Society Dog Show, I actually brought in, I had original cell from that. Right?
Yeah,
and I put that in and showed you,
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a fan. Aside from being a player, I'm a fan.
Yeah. Which adds to it. I think that makes, having that enthusiasm comes out in the work that's done. We were, the musicians record all over town, but some of the big venues are the Clint Eastwood recording stage at Warner Brothers, and then there's the stage over at Sony Pictures, and of course Capitol Records, the storied Capitol Records. We did a lot of the Have a Laugh recordings in Stage A. day at Capitol Records. Do you have a favorite venue that you like to play at?
I mean, I think in my heart, I truly loved working the Fox scoring stage, the Newman scoring stage. But, you know, and you had mentioned that Clint Eastwood. And Clint Eastwood, there is a point when the Warner Brothers stage was going to go away. Yeah. And Clint Eastwood, God bless Clint Eastwood, came in and put the money to make sure that stage stayed open. It's a great stage.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic stage. It really is. But, you know, that brings to mind a question for me that I've been wanting to ask you, and that because you're also the vice president of the American Federation of Musicians.
Local 47.
Yes, Local 47, which encompasses all the Hollywood players, all the Hollywood scoring sessions. And what is the state of the industry right now? How have the musicians gotten through this pandemic, and what's changing? Because I know that there's some recording sessions that are happening in Prague and other places around the world. What is that doing to the musicians here in Hollywood?
Well, again, you're speaking because of the COVID, and you know, so we could not. I mean, I never in my life, I don't think anybody ever thought there would be anything that would come down the line that would literally stop the music.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no live. We have one of the greatest orchestras, the LA Philharmonic. They could not play anywhere. And, you know, the Hollywood Bowl just now, this week, opened up, you know, but in the scoring stages, starting back in March, when everything just went away, you know, we as the union have been working hand in hand with LA County Fed and different doctors to write up a protocol to protect our musicians, right? And so we actually started back recording in the studios. There was some, quite a bit, you know, like they're redoing now. I think it's Animaniacs. And there were a lot of guys are doing, you know, things from home studios. They're recording. But as far as all the musicians in the scoring stage, it started out as in about August, where musicians, especially string players, who can play with a mask on.
Right.
And so what they would do is they called striping sessions. So the strings would start at 10 o'clock in the morning. So you have all the violins, and instead of two persons a stand, one person on the stand, there was a lot of protocols, a lot of safety protocols. Musicians constantly had to get tested and all that. Anyway, so the strings, I'm talking about violins, violas, cellos, bass, they would record their music. And they would record from 10 to 1 and then 2 to 5. And then in the afternoon, they'd spray the building, they'd spray the other thing down, and then they would allow the woodwind section to come in. And they could come in and play. Now, you have a huge stage, and there's maybe 10, 12 woodwinds, so everybody would be stretched out, okay? And then in the evening, the brass would come in. Now, you know, it's so funny how they're saying, well, you know, when a trumpet player plays that instrument, all those droplets are going out. No, again, on a trumpet and any brass, we have a little mouthpiece with a very small hole that we put the air into. So there's not a lot of droplets that's going out. But again, there was a protocol of distance and all. And so we did that all the way up until around January. And then when things started to cool down a little bit, they're again very conscientious. The brass would be in the back with plexiglass in front of us, or the percussions. So it is now picking up. There are a lot of great movies that are being scored, and so it's starting to pick up. But that whole time, the musicians were, all you could do is sit home and practice.
Right.
Now, the musicians, you know, the musicians who have been around and work all different kinds of jobs, you get residuals for commercials. If you worked on live TV like I did for 14 seasons on Dancing with the Stars. So we would get residuals, or, you know, so there was money coming in. But still, we had a lot of musicians who had to go to unemployment. And now it's starting to open up. You know, and like I said, Hollywood Bowl's open. The LA Philharmonic's going to be playing there. So it's slowly coming back, but it was really tough for a lot of our musicians.
Sure, and also on multiple fronts, because the session musicians are, you know, I think people should consider them like freelancers, right? Because you get brought in to do a session, and you get paid for that session, and then you hopefully are booked into another session the next day. But some of those musicians are also playing in the LA Philharmonic, or they're playing in other live groups and things like that. So they couldn't do any of that stuff for, you know, all last year, which sort of, you know, hit them on all sides.
And it was really bad. But I also think that the other people that suffered were just the masses of people who missed hearing that music. You know, that's I think that, you know, music, as David, as you know, without music in your life, you have a very boring life.
Absolutely. Again, you know, music sets the tone. It sets the mood. You know, whether you want to listen to classical or jazz, or you want to go to a pop or rock concert, you know, it gives you energy. And you know, we would be a very boring world without music.
Amen.
But has the pandemic sort of exacerbated some of the work going out of town?
You know, again, before this happened, there was work that was going out of town to Prague or to Bratislava or to London. You know, there was and it wasn't because it was all because of money.
Right. It always boils down to money, doesn't it?
When you record the music here, who plays on movies, you get a soundtrack. You get paid for the soundtrack. And you know, when you go to London and all that, you don't have to pay for that. You don't, you know. So I think that's why a lot of it left for a while. There wasn't so much during COVID, because even over there,
they was worse off. They were worse off. Yeah.
So, you know, it's going to be interesting. I think that by next year, we'll be able to see which way the pendulum shifts and what happens, you know. But the main thing reason it left town, or they don't do it in LA, is money.
Yeah.
The bottom line.
And I think that's unfortunate, because, you know, from my perspective, I've always felt like the musicians, the session musicians in Los Angeles are the best of the best. You know, I mean, that really is true, right?
And I know a lot of my fellow players around the world, you know. Yeah. And they're great musicians everywhere, you know. It's just out here, you know, you could get it done, let's say, I'm not going to say a place, but you could get it done, all the music recorded, or you know, the amount of the music recorded in 8 hours, let's say. You know, that's a cumulative over some days. Over here, we get all the music recorded in 3 hours, 3.5 hours, you know. So we do it more because that's what we do all the time. We know how to do it. Yeah. And, you know, so it's that's frustrating, especially to musicians here who, you know, why did you go over there? You know, and I had a great story that Jerry Goldsmith was and his son. I just knew them very well. And I asked Jerry one time, he had a movie that went to London that he was going to do here, and he ended up going over there. I said, Jerry, why did you do this? He says, Rick, he says, they're paying me my price, which at the time was $1.5 million to write the score.
Right.
Putting me up in a castle. They're flying myself and my wife over first class, and they're giving my wife a unlimited card to Harrods Now, what I should do, So I mean, you can't fight that. You
sold.
Yeah, there you go. That's something else. When you talk a little bit about the live performances, like when you were in Vegas, who did you like performing for or with when you were there?
Perfect job in Las Vegas for 9 years. In Las Vegas at that time, they had 11 hotels that had full house orchestras, 4 trumpets, 4 trombones, 5 saxes, strings, harp, everything. Every hotel that had a showroom had a full orchestra. Well, and it was 2 shows a night, 8 and midnight. That orchestra musicians could only work 6 days a week. So on the acts who they hired, they had to work 7. So on the 7th, they would bring in the band that I played with. We had 2 relief bands. I was with Johnny Haig's relief band, and we would work 6 different hotels every week.
That's awesome.
So I had a chance to play every act from Sinatra to Wayne Newton to Liberace to anybody you could think of. And I did that for 9 years.
Wow.
And that cool thing about that was, for me, I was heard by Nelson Riddle, and when I came to town, he put me to work, and Peter Mack. But that was the best job in town. I played every act you could think of, in the world. I mean, for me in Reno, when I was up there, I just turned 21 years old, and on December, Bill Cosby came in, and his opening act was Dizzy Gillespie.
Oh,
wow.
I had a chance to play with Dizzy Gillespie, hang with him, sit up in his room, I mean, that's the cool thing,
That's awesome.
And as far as those big acts go, who'd you have the most fun with? Who was part of the gang?
I mean, it was, again, I have to say that all the acts, they appreciate musicians.
Yeah.
The comedians appreciate the musicians, And so just as far as hanging, again, it was Dizzy. Rafael Mendez came in as a conductor for Roy Rogers, It was... at that time in Vegas, it was the place to be. We actually had the union was open till 4:00 in the morning. They'd have rehearsal bands at 2:00 in the morning. A bar. I mean, it was a hang. You're in I'm in my 20s, and it was crazy. It really was.
How was it living in Vegas during that time?
At that time, it was amazing. Again, because of my asthma, it's very dry, so I had no asthma troubles there.
Right.
I can tell when there was one cloud in the sky because I could feel my lungs tighten up.
Wow.
But and the school system is unbelievable there. But you just adjust the way you live. For example, like I said, we would play a show at 8:00 at night. We would play a show at midnight. I would come home after the 8:00 show at usually 9:15, and that's when I would eat dinner. And then I'd go back and play the show. We had a softball league that started at 3:30 in the morning for musicians and pit bosses and dealers because it was gorgeous. And you would play softball. The games would go until 5:30 in the morning. And then the guys who were into golf, such as myself, we'd golf, and then you were back home by 9:00 and you slept all the way until 6:00, and then you get up and go to work. So that's the whole thing. Your whole time schedule all changes. Yeah. But that's, when I moved here, obviously, it took a little while to get used to normal hours,
Sure. Did you during that time period, did you play in a house band or an orchestra?
Yeah, the relief band. It was called the relief band.
Yeah, the relief band. But did you play for any rock musicians?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Every rock act you could think of, I mean, we did Willie Nelson all the way, Elvis. My God, I played Elvis's act so many times.
Really? Wow.
Act, and so, there was that. Plus, there was filming. They would do TV specials. So I had a chance to learn how to do that. it was just an amazing time for music. It really was.
That's unbelievable. What made you move to Los Angeles? Was it just the desire to work in film?
From when I was a little kid, that every time I saw the Oscars, I said one day I'd want to do that. So I knew that LA was the place, but I had to hone my craft. So I went to Reno for 2 years and worked at Harris Reno for 2 years. Then I went to Vegas and worked all these different acts and everything. And so that made me a better all-around player. So when I came here, I was ready.
Right. So, one thing I did want to ask you was that you played literally for like 60 years. Yeah. And do you still play? But I know you've kind of retired from doing the session work. Is that right? Well, talk about that.
What it is, there was, I've done John Acosta, who was the president. We have a new president now, Stephanie O'Keefe, our first female president in the Local 47 in its 125 years history. Awesome. Anyway, when John approached me in 2014, he said, Rick, I think you'd be a great vice president. Everybody knows you, blah, blah, blah. And so I had to think about it because title officers are not allowed to play their instruments. So I thought, you know what? I've done everything I ever dreamt of as a player. Why not take the job? And so what I did was I would bring my horn to work, and then at 5 o'clock I'd get it out. It's for when we were supposed to leave. And then after about 5 months, I realized, I didn't touch my horn at all that time. And at that point, I thought, okay, but yet still, I get those pangs like every year the Oscars on those years I couldn't do. I did, but for me, the one that really Michael Giacchino did the Jurassic Park, the remake Jurassic Park, right? Yeah. And so I did the original one at Sony with John Williams. And so Michael, I had just been a vice president for about 6-7 months, and he invited me, him and Reggie Wilson invited me over to the studio to listen, to the thing. Now, I was Michael Giacchino's first trumpet player, played on all his things. And so I said, yeah, that's cool. So I went and talked to the orchestra, and, blah, blah, blah. Hey, guys, it's great, this. And I sat down in the front next to Reggie in the front of, orchestra at his desk. And the first cue they played was the Jurassic Park theme. And it hit me, oh, man. I did the original one there, and I could have, if I wasn't vice president, been back in the trumpet section. And I looked at Reggie, and I was crying. I said, Reggie, I got to leave. I cannot be here, And so, I love playing. But right now, someone says, well, why don't you just pick your horn up and play? Because it would probably drive me nuts because I know that I couldn't even get even this close to what I used to play, and that would piss me off. And so that's why I just decided I'd leave it in the case. I try to inspire and talk to younger musicians. That's what I love doing. I love every year I speak to the music classes, any kind of music classes at 13 different colleges. I just spoke to a class at Eastman. At Howard University, I just did a thing, And so in a way, what I tell them is I lie about my career and then I talk about the union. I love getting these questions because there's always questions because a lot of their teachers, they've never done what I've done, So I love imparting those facts to the younger musicians and inspire that way. And that's so, but in answer to your question, I do miss it every once in a while. I don't miss because I told you I never liked the practicing, but I played all the time, so I didn't have to practice.
Right. But do you play for yourself at all now?
Oh,
do you
nothing.
You don't even pick it up at all, really? No?
I have it right over there in the case.
Yeah.
But,
Well, maybe after our discussion, you'll pull it out and then give it a toot.
What the hell is that noise? Because anything coming out of this house.
You mentioned somebody that we both know, Reggie, and I always viewed him as a wrangler. He's like a music wrangler. But can you explain to our audience what Reggie does and what people like Reggie do in the business?
Absolutely. Reggie is what we call a contractor, musical contractor. All right. And so when the composer gets the job, he feels comfortable working with. We have 4, 5, or 6 different contractors in this town, and sometimes more, who either different composer likes using. And what the contractor does, there is a service in town called Dateline, and most of the musicians are member of Dateline. And what Dateline does is Reggie finds out what the instrumentation is from the composer. And Reggie has his list of musicians as well as the composer have their list of favorite players. The contractor has to call them, even if it's somebody Reggie does not know. And let's say it's the uncle of one of the composer. He says, this guy plays a great violin, bring him. So Reggie hires him, So what Reggie does is then he puts his list together that he works with the composer. And then he sends that list to Dateline. Dateline puts the call out. Mm-hmm. And all of our musicians, again, and you had said about freelance, it's true. The joke is you wait until the phone rings.
Yeah.
And then you're going to go to work. So everybody has a book, and we know, and they call. So Dateline says, hey, it's Reggie Wilson. It's a Pixar movie. It's next Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, 10 o'clock double sessions. Most sessions are based on 3 hours. Okay. We call it a single session. A double session is 10 to 1. Lunch, 1 hour lunch, and then 2 to 5. So Dateline calls and says, can you make this? If you make it, you say yes, you write it down, you're on the job.
Right.
So that's what Reggie does. Reggie is, and all the contractors, they're, they really, it's an amazing job. I thought at one time, before I became the vice president, I thought, maybe I would enjoy doing the contracting. And then the paperwork, because there's contracts they have to fill out. There's so many different things. I said, I'm just gonna keep playing my trumpet.
And Reggie knows the contract, the
absolutely.
In other words, the musician.
Actually, Reggie, one of those. Because, for years at Disney, he was, I think he was vice president of music or whatever.
Right. He sits across the
table when we are negotiating these contracts.
Yeah.
So yes, it's
so he's got the stopwatch, and he's sitting there and keeping track of stuff during a session, and knows when there needs to be a break and all of that.
Right. Because if he it could get out of hand. He has to. If we have to, let's say, go overtime, that's based on 15 minutes for a full orchestra.
Right.
That's a lot of money. So Reggie is kind of cracking the whip, but the way he does it, he is brilliant.
Yeah.
The nicest, again, was a musician, violin, and he hates when I tell him that. But because I actually have pictures of him goofing around on the violin. And one day I blew an 8x10 and I gave it to him. He says, and he ripped it up. He said, "Don't ever show this to anybody." But he makes it fun. That's the thing. Is, nobody wants to walk into a situation. If I say something, you're not going to get the best out of these people.
Sure.
Yeah, working for Reggie, working for Mark, working for Michael Giacchino, working for these guys who in their heart, they truly appreciate what you do. Mm-hmm. I will do anything for those guys because they appreciate us.
Yeah.
We never, work in the studios, you don't hear the applause. You don't hear that instant gratification when you're doing live.
Yeah.
But that Walter Murphy's another great guy who, after he does all the Family Guys, right?
Yeah.
In fact, I love telling this story, is that he called me and Walter Murphy in the 70s had a huge hit called The Fifth of Beethoven.
That's right.
I don't know if you remember that.
The disco version.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the disco, right. And he had a huge hit on that. Well, he got this call from this young guy, Seth MacFarlane. And so he called me, and he called Alan and Dan Higgins on sax. And he says, "Come on," we said, "we got this new we're going to do the main title for this new cartoon show called Family Guy." And so I went over to Walter's studio, And there was this young guy sitting on the couch. And so I recorded all the trumpet parts. So when you listen to the Family Guy, the main title, that's me on all 4 trumpet parts, right? And Alan Kaplan, all the trombone, and Dan Higgins, right? And so I remember, playing. And then after this young lady says, guys, I want you to meet the guy who created it. And it's Seth MacFarlane, the genius that's Seth MacFarlane. And so, that's the cool thing. It really is.
So let me ask you, because we're bumping up against an hour now. I want to ask you, what advice do you give to that next generation that's in college and aspiring to those kinds of dreams that you had of wanting to play on motion pictures?
Perfect, and this is exactly what I do, and thank you for that. Again, that's why I love being invited, because any new members, they come through my office after they have their orientation, and I send them down. And I said, what do you want to do? Oh, you want to work in the studios? Okay. And this is, again, when I speak to all the colleges, the teachers hate when I say this, but resumes are a waste of paper. And I'll tell you that, and they well, sometimes it's good. I said, no, because you can say whatever you want on a resume. You send all the resumes out. You send them to a contractor like Reggie, who you could imagine the amount of resumes he must get every day. But so I tell them, this is what I do. This is what I tell them to do. All right, let's say, you're a violin player, okay? You find out, or else I'll tell them, who's the number 1 concert master in town. Because the concert masters are one that puts the list of the violins that are going to sit behind him and gives them to the contractor, right? So you call the concert master. In this case, it'd be Bruce Dukoff or Belinda Broughton, who you know.
Yeah, Belinda. Yeah,
right? We
love her.
So I would say, I give them their number, call them and ask them for a lesson. And this is on any instrument. I would do this. Ask them for a lesson. I said, that $7,500 that you would pay for the lesson, what then? At that point, Belinda hears you play. Wow, very good. Also, she sees what kind of personality you have. Are you going to fit into personality-wise with the rest of the section, right? And then when she calls Reggie and says, Reggie, I just heard this new young player. This is their name. That's how you get in the studio. And I also tell them the first thing when they walk into my office, I said, wait a minute, I said, okay, give me your card. That's a business card. Mostly they said, oh, I don't have a card. I said, this is the cheapest form of advertisement. You never know who's going to in the audience when you're playing. You could be playing at church. You could be playing with your case open in front of Trader Joe's. Someone walks up to you and says, hey, you sound great. You have a card, right? That's how you get found out. For me, I had the perfect example. I had just moved to town. I hadn't really started working a lot. And at the Beverly Hilton, I got called to do a Saturday night dance job with this older band, and I went and played, stood up and played a couple of solos, and had fun. Made $100, whatever. After the job, older gentleman walked up to me, and he says, "I really enjoyed your trumpet, your sound. I like your sound and your solos." I said, "Oh, thank you." He said, "Do you have a card?" I said, "Yes, sir." I gave him my card. Now I had just moved to town, right? And he says, "I'm going to give it to my contractor. He'll be contacting you." That person was David Rose, and the TV show I got called to do was Highway to Heaven that I did for the next 5 years from that one job that they heard me play.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, there you go. Those are some words. Hey, Rick, we have some listener questions that Aljon is going to put to you at this moment.
Cool. Absolutely. Here they are.
Skull Rock Podcast answers your email.
So, Rick, we put the word out to our fans, and they responded in kind. So, Lisa C. says, what was it like working on live TV like you did for Dancing with the Stars? Can you share a story or funny moment from your work on that show?
Absolutely. For us, we truly love that show. And again, that show started out as a summer replacement show. All right. We did the first, the group of musicians did the first 4 seasons of American Idol. And then we got called to do this ballroom dancing show that Disney heard over in England. Over in England, it's called Strictly Come Dancing, right? So we got together. Harold Wheeler put together and Bill Hughes put together a great band. And so a week before we went on the air, we had to go with the dancers, and we played for a bunch of Disney suits who sat out there, right? They wanted to see what they were paying for, right? And so we played, and the music, again, a great band and singers we had, and Tom Rainier while we're doing this, text Salazano, saxophone player, and said, wow, I feel like we're playing on the Titanic, right? We thought, who the hell is going to watch a ballroom dancing show? Ended up being 20 million people a week. Yes. And the thing I always loved was as they're walking down the stairs at the beginning of the show, the last shot always went to me going, ba-ba-da-ba-ba.
That's right. Yeah.
But anyway, it was an amazing show. It was, as I said, everybody, it was absolutely live. It was a great band. And the eye candy wasn't bad.
Yeah, that's not bad. I was going to say, those dresses are something else. Dale B.
And believe me, I have a lot of photos.
I bet you do. I bet you do. Dale B. is asking, I love your work in Disney's Soul, Pixar's Soul. Do you have a favorite soundtrack, and what is your favorite musician-based film?
Ooh, musician-based film, meaning...
I guess they mean maybe it was like, not a musical, but like a story
about a musician?
About a musician,
okay, yeah.
Biopic
I think, I mean, again, because the most... credits I get for is Incredibles. I think that's probably one of my favorites, But I've done, Bill Conti wrote Blood In, Blood Out, which I'm featured through the whole thing. Oh my God, it's a heavy movie. It really is. But and I think as far as growing up, any one of the Singing in the Rain. I mean, when you think about that, or, because when I found out who those players were back in those days that played on those scores, and I love, we're talking about the 40s and 50s and amazing players. So, I mean, that's a tough one. I love playing on Clint Eastwood Bird, did that movie, and that was an amazing movie to play on and to watch, and it's the story is pretty right on, I gotta admit.
And that's a director who really appreciates music.
Oh,
of course,
absolutely,
yeah.
And you know what? He's a life member of Local 47.
Oh, that's awesome.
There you go. I love it. John S. is asking you, and you kind of hinted on this, what musicians influenced you?
Truthfully, again, growing up, my teacher wanted me to be a legit trumpet player, orchestra player. But then I heard Maynard Ferguson. I heard Woody Herman's band. I heard Count Basie's band. And so then I started to listen to all those guys, especially like Snooky Young for Count Basie. And, I think that's, as far as a trumpet player, of course, Dizzy Gillespie, Miles and all those things. But for me, it was always, I loved the big band and those guys, those trumpet players. And I'm thrilled to say that I've worked with them. And, Conrad Gazzo, I never worked with him, who played on all of Sinatra's records. I mean, there's so many great, Pete Condoli and, John Ardino on the Tonight Show, and Doc. I love Doc. Doc, who just had a birthday 2 days ago. He's 94 years old and still playing his
wow.
Amazing.
Wow.
Amazing. Yeah, you could be like the Tijuana Brass and be on the top floor.
Yeah, and Herb, and of course, Herb's a good friend, and boy, talk about an amazing philanthropist.
Oh my gosh. No, Rick, the music school over at Cal Arts is the Herb Albert Music School.
There you go.
No, it's Cal, oh my gosh.
California Institute of the Arts.
It's LACC. LACC has the Herb Albert. He gave them $10.1 million to build it.
Oh my goodness.
Cal Arts also, yeah.
Yeah. It's really something else.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Amazing philanthropist.
Yeah.
Cool.
Last bit for you. We have a little bit of word association word for you. So feel free to respond in like a word or two about some of these figures in your life. Frank Sinatra.
I traveled on the road with him for 3 years, recorded with him. Genius. He called me kid.
Did he give you a lighter?
No, but I do have some things right on my wall right there. I did all the Duets album, and I had him sign the paper that showed the songs that he sang that night at Capitol.
Oh, that's amazing. John Williams.
Genius. The best. The amazing. He is any musician who has ever worked for John Williams. The greatest.
Barbra Streisand.
Really amazing. I've done a lot of albums with Barbra. She is a genius. We were doing her Broadway album, and it was so funny because she was standing literally right next to the oboe player who had a big solo, and she was talking with Peter Matz, and she says, "What is that sound? Who's playing that?" And she was literally standing right next to the guy, But Barbra, again, a genius. What can you say? I mean, that voice is the best. She is.
Sylvester Stallone.
Sly is the greatest guy. And I think a lot of the people, hopefully they've seen the YouTube clip on Rocky Balboa. And the way that came about was we had recorded with a smaller group, the bum bum ba dum ba dum right, and so when Sly came in, he came to Fox Scoring Stage, and he played it, and they played it on the speakers. We had 9 trumpets. I had 9 horses. I mean, it was amazing, And so Bill Conti says, "Rick, you got to help me out. We got to sell this." So Sly listens to me. He says, "Bill, it's I'm 6 years old. I'm just coming back on this, And so I said, "Well, Sly, why don't you come out and stand in front of the brass section so you can feel the power, right?" And so he said, "Okay." And Bill Conti's going like this, And so we walked out. I said, "Guys," as I'm walking out, I said to the guys, "Play as loud as you can and aim at his head." Right? And like I said, we had some real horses, right? And so Sly stood no more than 15 feet away, and I counted off 1, 2, 3. Bum, bum, and the string players are going like this, ducking, He never flinched. And he says, "Well, and you could see on the YouTube thing, no," he says, "That's good. I just want you." And I says, "Well, sir, the only thing I can think about is that why don't we double it now?" What that means is we had 9 trumpets. If we double track it, there's like 18 trumpets and 12 trombones and 24. And so I was a hero because all of my brass players, we got double scale because that's how we finally ended up selling it to Sly. So,
that's amazing.
That's yeah.
Yeah. 1 is good. 2 is better. So more is better.
2 is much better. Especially for the pocketbook.
That's right. Last one. Alan Menken.
Alan Menken, again, I'm so thrilled to say I played on, almost all of his movies. He's brilliant. He's a very caring, and Michael Starobin, who is his orchestrator. I mean, these people, how could you not be impressed with what they do? And like I said, then when you get a chance to really meet them, and they're normal people. They appreciated what we did, what we brought to their score. And so, yes, Alan Menken, the best.
Alan's yeah, go ahead.
Oh, Alan, right?
I was just going to say, Alan is probably one of the most grounded, nicest people I've ever met in the industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Incredible.
Well, that's wonderful.
And let me put it out there to everybody listening. And this is something that I've done, and I know David knows. Is I get autographs, that's something for me is, when all the movies I've worked on, the copyists have a big 11 by 17 sheet that shows all the scores on it, says the date that we did the scores. I always had the composer, the director, if there's any stars show up, I haven't signed that. And I have over 1,000 in a folder here that those are kind of things that it's always great memories. So get autographs.
Well, you know something? No, I did the same thing, Rick. Whenever I did recording sessions with you guys, I always took the top sheet and had Mark or all the musicians that were playing. I had them sign, and those are just wonderful mementos to have.
Absolutely,
they really are.
That's great.
Well.
Man.
I have to say that brings us to the end, but I have to say, Rick, it's so wonderful to see you, and I'm so thankful that you had the time to come on our show and talk a little bit behind the scenes about the music and all that. So I'll give you the parting words.
Okay, cool. Well, for me, again, I'm a fan of you, you know that, but this, I hopefully it comes across the enthusiasm, the love, and it's the greatest gift that God could give us to do something that you love doing and get paid for it. How cool is that? And that's the parting words, is that it's an amazing life. It's, just go for it. Have a dream and go for it.
There you have it. Thank you so much, Rick, for being on the Skull Rock podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Anytime, if you want me to come back, I'll be there in a second.
Absolutely.
What do you think? Close.
Rick, this is Sly in fiction.
Okay.
It's like they haven't heard this for years, so that first initial 4 or 5 notes, it almost has to be like it's an explosion of air where you're pushing as hard as you could possibly push.
Okay.
So it isn't like a control thing. It's like, all right. It's very sharp.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Okay. As opposed to that.
Right.
Hey, gang, thank you so much for listening to this show. If you love Disney and pop culture like we do, please subscribe to the show on every podcast platform. We're out there. All right, subscribe today. Tell your friends about us. Give us those 5-star reviews if you believe we deserve it. We love the feedback, so keep it coming. You can follow us on all the social media: Facebook, X, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Instagram. We're there. You can also send us those messages using that link below in our show notes. Give us the voicemail. We'd love to hear from you. Check out the entire show archive at skullrockpodcast.com. Send us those emails, Dave or Aljon, at skullrockpodcast.com. And you can also follow me, Aljon Go, on Instagram, Aljon Go on Twitter, Aljon Go, Aljon Rocks on Twitter and Blue Sky. You can check that out as well. And you can also check out Dining at Disney podcast, where we have our wrap-up show for this year. Kat, Kristen, and myself, we talk about Disney parks and food. And we'll continue that on to 2025. Dave?
February 21st to the 23rd, we'll be at the Animation Y'all Expo in Nashville. I can't wait for that to come around. It'll be here before we know it. You can also hear my tunes behind the tunes on Sirius XM Disney Hits on channel 133. And this month, the month of December, we're spotlighting Beauty and the Beast Belle for December. That is the song that I talk about on the program. So check that out. Also, if you're interested in my book that Aljon was so kind to give a shout out to, Find Your Happy Place, the 8-step guide to boosting your creativity through a personal retreat, just recently won a gold medal at the Fire Book Awards in Texas. So I'm really thrilled about that. You can check that out on theoldmillpress.com or wherever you buy your books. It's on all the online bookstores. You can check it out. And if you like it, leave a review for it. I always appreciate the reviews. And, of course, you can go to davidbossert.com, which has all kinds of free content and whatnot that you can check out there. Go out and have a fantastic time. Spend time with your loved ones, with friends, family. Enjoy yourselves. Be safe out there. There's snow blanketing parts of the country, and it gets treacherous when it starts snowing out, so be careful. And we will see you back here on, I think, Aljon, it's going to be January 13th, but we'll have our first new show. Yep. And in the interim, we've got some wonderful vault shows that are going to be dropping. Yeah. So I hope you enjoy those. And again, we wish you all a very happy holiday season.
Happy New Year, everybody.